Hi, I'm Hudson Borthwick, and today I'll be doing a TOK presentation on ethics and faith. Okay, so my real life situation involved my mother. She was boarding an airplane, and she had to put her heavy suitcase into the luggage compartment above. And the man sitting in front of her asked her if she needed help lifting her suitcase. And then the man sitting behind her interrupted and said, "Whoa, you could have just totally offended her. She looks like a strong woman. She doesn't need a man's help to do something." When I first heard this, I was kind of confused and questioning, well, isn't it ethical to help a woman? Isn't it ethical to help anybody? But apparently, there are different perspectives and views on this situation, which I thought it could be a knowledgeable issue. So I asked, is it ethical for a man to ask a woman if they need help? How do we know what is ethical and what is not ethical, as ethics has different perspectives? And so with this, I thought, well, wouldn't that stem from faith? Because faith is our implementation of what we believe. And of course, reason and emotion can also be used to gain the knowledge, but you need to have faith in order to implement it to become shared knowledge or to become another ethical standard. So then I thought, if personal beliefs impact shared knowledge, then would it influence the area of knowledge? And that brought me to my knowledge question. My knowledge question is, to what extent does faith influence our ethics? And I'm going to look at the following ways of knowing that will be used to explore my knowledge question. The first one is faith. And I'm basically asking about different ethical standards and them stemming from faith. I'm going to be looking at emotion, and emotion is primarily personal knowledge, and so that personal knowledge has to become shared knowledge by sharing it by emotion. And then reason is used to understand the differences in ethical standards and why something is what it is. And reason was created first by the philosophers back in ancient times, like Plato, Socrates. Mostly Plato used reason to determine the common good. My assumption is that faith does have a strong influence on ethics because of the different ethical standards that we use in our society stem from different types of faith. So, my first claim is that emotion is used to decide whether ethical standards one should use. So, how we feel in a certain situation is something that we perceive as knowledge, and then that knowledge becomes personal knowledge, and then we share that knowledge through our own emotions about that certain subject. So, an example of this, I was watching a YouTube video, and it was a man talking about his friend opening up the door for a woman. And as the woman was walking by, she felt very hurt, and she expressed anger at the other man, saying that, this made me feel degraded and makes me feel like you are a sexist because of what you just did. Because she was implying that she was saying that he was implying that she could not open the door because she was a woman, which made her feel angry. So she used emotion to express her knowledge on the ethical situation. So a counter to this, however, is that emotion is not completely reliable. It relies on bias. So because of that person's emotion, the ethical situation might be true to that person. However, it does not mean that it's true to everyone, because it's personal. So my mini conclusion on this is that emotion only influences ethics to a certain extent before it becomes biased information or biased knowledge, therefore not being reliable knowledge. Okay, so my second claim is that reason can be used as reliable knowledge to determine ethics. So reason was used by the ancient philosophers, back in Greece and Rome. One, it was used by Plato a lot, and that's my example, is that Plato used reason to determine ethics as being a common good. That ethics was basically reasonable knowledge. He said that evil comes from the lack of knowledge. So Plato used ethics to determine Plato used reason to determine what could be ethical or not. In a study done by the Daily Mail, it was a study done that took men and they did a certain activity in which different questions were asked based on sexist views and stuff, and they found that men who smile and open doors for women tend to be benevolently sexist. So this study was proven by facts and information that we can use reason to determine, so that is actually sexism based on reason and the facts and knowledge that come from it. So by looking at the facts, we use reason, and we use reason to determine that that is unethical. And so it's easy to say through reason we can determine reliable knowledge, but many people do not use reason nowadays because of the differences in ethical standards. It doesn't make sense that there would be differences in ethical standards if everyone used reason to determine ethics. Then the ethics would be the same or very similar. But it isn't. It's the exact opposite from each other. And so this brings me into my third claim. Because there are differences in ethical standards, then that means that faith has caused the differences. Because faith influences ethics by creating different perspectives. So, emotion and reason confirm our faith in the ethical standards that we follow in our daily lives. But faith is super important because it's the final factor that makes us believe in our ethical standards. So you have to have faith in order to believe in your emotion or in your reason, which determines your ethical, viewpoint. An example comes from the second edition Theory of Knowledge book, in which it states, faith will most awaken differences of perspective and stimulate exploration of both your own ideas and those of other people. So faith starts with personal knowledge, and you gain that knowledge through reason and emotion, but you have to have the faith to believe that that knowledge is true. And then it becomes shared knowledge because of your faith, which you would use emotion and reason to share it. But by faith, you know that that knowledge is true, which is why you share that knowledge. And then once people believe in the same fact that you have, then it could become an ethical standard for most people if they believe. The counter to this is that faith can only work with other ways of knowing. If you just have faith, then it would be hard to process different information if you can't process it by emotion or by reason or by sensory perception or imagination or language. It needs to have a certain way of knowing before you can implement faith. Faith is like the ending factor. It's what makes it solid or true to the person. So personally, for personal knowledge, it makes it true. Okay. So my conclusion is that faith does influence ethics to the extent of establishing different perspectives of ethics in our society. Emotion and reason play a key role in influencing faith, but faith determines what is right because our emotion and our reason play into that. So some flaws in this is that faith and emotion and ethics are not the only things that influence ethics. We have language, emotion, intuition, and memory. So an application to the real life situation is that the difference in ethical standards resulted from different faith. The first man had a different faith that it is ethical to help a woman. He must have grown up and believed in it in order to implement what he did and carried it out by his actions. Same thing for the man in the back. His faith was different than the man in the front, and he believed that it is not ethical to help a woman because it is sexist, and that is unethical, and it degrades women because it's based on emotion. It hurts the woman emotionally, so therefore it is unethical. But he has faith in that, which is why he acted and said and spoke out against the other man. And this is my bibliography.